Ever get that feeling like you're at the grocery store, your basket's half empty, and you're wondering, how did everything get so expensive?
Yeah.
Well, multiply that by 10, and you've got a sense of daily life in Nigeria right now.
Right.
So today, we're diving deep into the heart of the Nigerian economic crisis,
Right.
but not just through the numbers.
Yeah.
We're going straight to the source, a bustling marketplace in Nigeria.
I mean, that's where you really get a sense of the ground truth.
Exactly. We're talking to everyday people who are living this crisis every single day.
And what's so powerful about those firsthand accounts, those voices from the market, is like they bring a whole other dimension to this crisis that economic data alone just can't capture.
Absolutely. And one of the most striking things that comes through in these interviews is this sense of almost betrayal that a lot of people feel towards President Tinubu.
Interesting.
They had so much hope when he was elected, you know.
Right.
There was this real sense of optimism, like he was going to fix things.
Yeah.
And now they're struggling more than ever, and they're like, what happened?
Right, right.
And it's not just some abstract political disappointment. I mean, this is deeply personal for people.
Yeah.
Like, we talked to this one meat seller, Matthew Iroko, and he was ecstatic when Tinubu won. He actually hosted this whole little celebration right there in the market.
Wow.
And now he's saying he can barely look his customers in the eye.
Oh, wow.
Because, like, he sees their struggles.
Right.
He feels like he's let them down in a way.
Yeah, because he brought into it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's something we've seen time and again throughout history, right? This disconnect between those campaign promises and the actual, often really harsh realities of governing.
Right.
I mean, remember the Greek debt crisis a few years back?
Yeah, yeah.
All that initial optimism surrounding the new leadership, and then, boom, austerity measures hit, and people's lives are upended.
Right, yeah.
And that's not to say that leadership doesn't matter, but
Of course.
it's just that, the relationship between a leader's promises and, like, the often unpredictable nature of the global economy.
Yeah.
It's incredibly complex.
It makes you wonder how much any leader can really control something as massive and as complex as a national economy.
Right.
Especially in such a globalized world.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
But let's bring it back to Nigeria for a second.
Okay.
Back to that market we're talking about.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you've got all these reports of people struggling to afford, like, basic staples.
Right, like bread and rice and...
Exactly. Things that, should be givens.
Exactly.
And then you hear from this grocery trader, Favor Martins, and she's saying that even the vegetables she sells have become a luxury for a lot of people.
Vegetables.
Vegetables.
Wow.
It's just this really stark reminder that this crisis,
It's in every...
it's affecting every aspect of daily life.
It's affecting everything.
Yeah. I mean, it really hits home, when you realize it's not just numbers, it's real people
Absolutely.
having to make these impossible choices.
Yeah, and it's so much more than just like cutting back.
Right.
Like we're talking about families at their absolute limit.
Right.
Having to decide, okay, do we feed our kids this week? Or do we pay for their school fees?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And even those choices sometimes aren't enough, you know? Like, from what we're hearing, there's this deep sense of despair.
Yeah.
It's not just the financial hardship, but this feeling of broken promises.
Right.
Like shattered dreams. I mean, one vendor even used the word starving.
Wow.
To describe what she was seeing.
That's that dire.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that human cost.
Right.
It's immeasurable, really.
It goes so far beyond just the material needs.
Absolutely.
Like the mental health impact alone.
Oh, yeah.
The stress, the anxiety, just the weight of it all.
And that feeling of being trapped.
Yeah.
Like you can't get ahead.
Right. Like the system's rigged.
Exactly. And all that chronic stress.
Right.
I mean, it manifests in so many ways.
Right.
Higher rates of depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
Domestic violence, even.
Wow.
It really just eats away at the fabric of society.
It's like this ripple effect.
Exactly.
That just goes on and on.
Yeah, and erodes trust in institutions, too.
Right, like why bother?
Exactly. And in extreme cases, you even see social unrest.
Right.
Instability. I mean, look at Greece again.
Yeah.
All those protests, that anger.
Yeah.
Deep political divisions.
Yeah, it all kind of snowballed.
Exactly. The economic crisis just fueled all of that.
But even with all that, even with how bleak it can seem, you still get this overwhelming sense of, like, this determination, this drive. Like, people aren't just going to accept this as their fate.
Absolutely not. There's a real fighting spirit.
Right. They're demanding solutions. Like, hey,
Yeah.
we need action, and we need it now.
Absolutely. There's a real sense of urgency, especially directed at the government.
Oh.
Like, a lot of folks feel let down. They're frustrated,
Yeah.
by the lack of support, policies that feel like they're making things worse.
It's like they're being ignored.
In a way, yeah. And they're just looking for someone to step in.
Right, to help right the ship.
Exactly.
So what are they actually asking for?
Well, like, there's no easy answer, no magic bullet.
Right.
But we're hearing a lot of different ideas,
Okay.
Like, some are calling for price controls
Okay.
on essential goods.
Price controls, so like
Imagine you go to the market and bread, rice, it's all at a fixed price.
right, set by the government.
Exactly. It would definitely provide some immediate relief.
Seems like a no-brainer, but I'm guessing it's not that simple.
Yeah, you got to be careful with price controls.
Really?
Yeah, they can have unintended consequences.
Like what?
Well, for one, they can disincentivize production,
Oh, so then you have shortages.
Exactly.
God.
It's a really tough balancing act.
It is.
And then, there's this whole other group advocating for stronger social safety nets.
Okay, like
So imagine a system where if you're struggling to put food on the table,
right.
there's automatic financial assistance
Okay.
or like expanded food programs.
Interesting.
So those who are most vulnerable are always protected.
It's a great idea in theory, but like, what would it take to actually build something like that?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
It requires long-term vision,
Yeah.
sustainable funding,
Right.
and this real commitment to tackling the root causes of inequality.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really, really complicated.
It always does.
Right.
It always does. But it's important to remember, like, at the heart of all this are real people.
Of course, yeah.
Like Matthew, Favor, all those we've talked about.
Absolutely.
So, like, if you could speak to them directly, what would you want them to know?
Honestly,
Yeah.
I'd want them to know that their stories matter,
Yeah.
that their voices are being heard, even if it doesn't always feel like it,
Yeah.
and that their resilience,
Yeah.
like their strength in the face of all this, it's truly remarkable.
It really is.
And you know what? This might be happening in Nigeria, but these themes,
Right.
this struggle for economic security, the desire for a government that listens and acts,
Right.
the power of collective action, that's universal.
It really is. And it just reminds us that we're all connected.
We are.
That economic hardship anywhere affects everyone everywhere.
Absolutely.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive into the heart of the Nigerian economic crisis,
Yeah.
the question we want to leave you with is this: what can we learn from the struggles of others?
Right.
And how can we, as global citizens, contribute to a world where everyone has the opportunity not just to survive,
Right.
but to truly thrive? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to keep exploring these important issues, keep listening to those most affected, and keep asking those tough questions.